by the end of this, it was just violently shaking.
Violently shaking.
And letting off this, you'd see it. It was just like this, it was blurring a little bit, like it was just really shaking. And then when it really kind of reached, I suppose, a fever pitch, all of a sudden a flame shot out of it.
Oh.
About a foot. Immediately after the flame shut out, a black blob object, probably the size of the old 50-cent, pieces of money, maybe a little bigger, came flying straight at my head. At your head? Yeah, and my first instinct was just duck.
Oh, my instinct would be duck and run.
And I ducked, and I had my head on for a second, and I went, what was that?
Yes.
I probably thought it a little more colorfully than that, but, just, what was that? Got up, looked around. First thing I did was I spun around, and I looked to see, is there, any dead moths or anything around? I didn't see any insects, nothing whatsoever. Then the next thing I thought was, I'm like, oh, my God, I got to turn the light off. Maybe the light just, burst or something.
Yeah.
Turned the lamp off. It was, kind of hot. Couldn't really, touch it, but I kind of carefully turned around, looked at it. Bulb hadn't broke or anything like that. Turned it back on. It worked fine. No buzzing noise, no nothing.
What do you think you met up with?
I really, honestly, I'd love to say it was a ghost, it was a poltergeist, but I just don't know.
You just don't know.
Obviously, it wasn't particularly nice.
No.
It wasn't very friendly. I mean, we've had, where my father and I have heard something, heard a mumbling voice at the same time in different areas of the house.
Gotcha. Listen, we've got to go.
All right.
We're out of time, but thank you very, very much for the story. All right, we are going to go into hour 5. I'm just going to go right on ahead and extend the program. Why not? You're listening to Halloween 2003. This is Ghost to Ghost AM, and I'm Art Bell.
This is Ghost to Ghost AM with Art Bell on the Premier Radio Network.
Ghost to Ghost AM. Good morning, everybody. Soaring into hour 5 of Ghost to Ghost AM. Why not? Let's do one more hour, shall we? It's your show, your stories, and I don't know. For the rest of you who aren't calling in, those who aren't getting through, sit back, listen to these stories, and decide in your own mind, all religion, everything else aside, if what you're hearing doesn't go an awful long way toward definitely hinting, whether you've had the experience or not, that there's really something happening out there after death. There's really something waiting for us on the other side. It won't be all over. Not all over, just the physical part of it. I don't know, as you lie there in the dark, or probably semi-dark, listening to all this, you really have to start thinking about it a little bit. Thinking about the reality of physical death and what may come after. And indeed, as you listen, how can you deny that something must be there? It may or may not be to your liking, but there must be something there. And good morning, you're on the air, Coast to Coast AM, or Ghost to Ghost AM, as it were.
Good morning, Art.
Hi, where are you?
Portland, Oregon.
Portland, and your name?
Cynthia.
Okay, Cynthia.
And I listen on 1190 KEX.
The mighty KEX in Portland, of course.
Well, I have kind of a spooky story.
Okay, you're going to have to speak up good and loud.
Hi. Okay. I attended U of O about 20 years ago.
Right.
And I lived in this beautiful sorority. It's the oldest on campus. It's historically registered. It's a big old brick timber Tudor with a tower and many nooks and crannies.
Beautiful. Sounds beautiful.
Yeah, and it's beautiful, and it never seemed spooky to me living there because it was always full of lively women and music and...
Oh, we all know from having seen all the ghost stories in the world that lots of things happen in girls' dorms.
Well, one spring break, they always close up the sororities during spring break. You can't stay there during the break. But I had a flight that didn't leave till...
Wait a minute, what kind of attitude is that? I mean, you're going to go off and spring break it, right? And they won't even let you in the dorm where you'd be cool.
I think it's a financial issue.
I see. All right.
But I had a flight the following day after they were closing up the house, and I was going to get a hotel. But I had a good relationship with our house mother, and she said she'd kind of break the rules and let me stay there. Uh-huh. So I stayed in this huge sorority all by myself one evening.
Creepy enough, huh?
And I'm guessing it's about 10 to 12,000 square feet. Huge building. It's 3 stories with a full attic, a basement,
Right.
about 40 bedrooms. And my floor was on the 3rd floor, overlooking the mill race. It's this river that runs through campus, kind of up in the trees. And my room had a bed that was built up, kind of built in. It was about 4 feet off the ground.
Yes.
And the ceilings were really low also. Very cozy room. And I had this bank of windows I could look out to. And there was a moon that evening. And I read a book and cuddled into bed and fell asleep. I didn't think anything of being completely alone in this huge building. And I was sound asleep, and something absolutely jarred me awake. I mean, just almost like someone grabbed your shirt and pulled you up.
Uh-huh.
And it's like the atmosphere had changed. It's like the room had the air just sucked out of it.
Yes, when these things begin to happen, not only had you been awake enough, you would have felt it prior to the beginning. There would have been a sort of a foreshock of feeling. But then when the incident is underway, it's big time.
Well, it happened so fast, and I was wide awake. My
Yes.
adrenaline had just dumped into my system. And I was just laying there going, oh, my gosh, what's happening? And remember I said it was a moonlit night.
Oh, yes.
And it was a little bit windy. And I started seeing these little wispy, shadowy figures hovering around the ceiling, kind of going in a circular pattern.
Uh-huh.
Kind of like 4-inch wispy, I don't know what they were, demon things.
Yeah.
I was very scared. The room got very cold. And the room slowly filled up with these things. They were whirling over my head, making this shoo, shoo sound.
Oh, brother.
I was terrified because all of a sudden it really hit me that I'm alone in this huge, huge building. With
Yeah, and
no
when
one...
you're in a dorm, nobody hears you scream.
Well, this is a huge house, separate from everything.
Uh-huh.
And while this is happening, the phone starts ringing way, way down the hall. It's probably 10 bedrooms away. There's this little tiny closet with one phone for the whole floor.
Yes.
It's ringing and ringing and ringing. I'm too scared to get up and get it. Who would be calling? It's about 3 o'clock in the morning because I looked at my clock. And I had just finished a book called Satan's Cellar. It's actually a Christian book. So maybe that opened the door, but it's a Christian book. And I was recently baptized, get this, at Applegate Christian Fellowship, where this other guy that just called in lives.
Yes.
I was a new Christian, and this book was about a young boy who was raised in a very Christian family, very goody two-shoes his whole life, and when he was a teenager, he really rebelled and ended up getting into Satanism, and how he reverts back into Christianity.
So, you see, your mind was in that set.
It could be, but
it could easily be.
This book, one thing I really remembered is it had the prayer that you're supposed to say if you feel evil or demon after you, and it's Satan, get thee behind me. And I said that.
Satan, get thee behind me?
Yes.
Ah.
And Art, the room cleared instantly. It's like the air got sucked back in. It got warm, and
the event was over.
And I was completely at peace. The phone had stopped ringing, and I was just warm and cozy, and I said another prayer just to keep me safe, and I had one of the best sleeps of my life that night.
All right, got it. Thank you very, very much. You see, it just does not surprise me. She had just finished a book, though it be a Christian book, on the subject, of the devil. And so that was on her mind. And I think one other thing that's clearly coming out of this program tonight is that you don't need an object. You don't need any sort of accoutrements. You don't need anything to get to the other side except your mind. And if you focus your mind on bridging that little gap, you bridge it all right. Now, what walks through, that's an entirely different situation, but you bridge it. Wildcard line, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Hi.
Hi, Art. How are you?
I'm all right. What is your first name?
Steve.
Steve.
Boise, Idaho.
All right, Steve. Welcome.
I'd like to, thank you for taking my call, by the way.
Yes.
I'd like to tell you a story. My old grandparents, great-great-grandparents, they used to own a mine up near Grimes Creek which is near Idaho City, up in Idaho.
Is that a gold or silver mine or what?
It's a gold mine.
Gold mine.
It's an old gold mine. Idaho City is an old gold mining town.
Right.
Anyways, long story short, my great-grandfather and his brother owned a mining company, and the mine, they sold all of them but one, and we kept one in our family. And I'd been hearing stories and stories and stories about the mine and how much gold was still up there, and they never mined it because it wasn't profitable for them, because they would have had to pay the workers and everything.
Sure.
And I went up there one day, and I got a map and went up to the roads above Grimes Pass, which is where the mine is, and I stopped in to check it out. And I happened to walk in the mine, and I looked across the creek, and there was like this old, I don't know how to describe it, a Victorian-style house. It was about 3 stories tall, just a beautiful, beautiful, almost like farmhouse. And I thought, that's really a neat house, and it didn't look like it had been dilapidated at all. And so I took my little flashlight and I went into the mine, and as I walked in, I found a set of old mining tools, like a hand drill and a pickaxe and like a pan also.
Okay.
And so I walked back into the mine, and I stopped, and I was like, gee, I wonder where the gold is, and I'm looking around, and I can't find it. And so I start drilling into the wall with these old tools. And a gentleman dressed in a business suit and a top hat, almost like 1890s, 1900s era, comes, and he looks at me and he says, "You're doing that wrong, son."
Said, you're kidding.
No, I said, "Excuse me?" And I'm looking around, and I'm thinking, where did this guy come from?
Yeah.
And I say, "Okay, what's the right way?"
How about, who are you and what are you doing here?
Well, it didn't even cross my mind.
All right.
I guess I had what you would call gold fever, if that makes sense.
He was going to show you how to get it.
Yeah.
Oh, it does make sense. Humans have an unnatural attraction to gold. All humans do.
It's bizarre how much gold will affect people.
You're correct.
So, anyways, he comes over without missing a beat, and he takes the tools out of my hand, and he grabs my hand, and he walks me down to the edge of this mine shaft, and he sinks the pickaxe into the wall, and he starts drilling, and he's like, "Okay, the rest is up to you." And I said, "Okay, thanks for your..." And I turned around, and he was gone. The guy had just disappeared, and so I sunk my pickaxe in there, and sure enough, out popped a nugget. And
he took you right to it.
Right to it. And so I ended up walking out, and as I happened to go back to the car when I was all done and everything, and I'd gotten about 3 good-sized nuggets, I happened to look over, and the house wasn't there anymore. The house had been...
The house was gone?
The house was gone.
Wow.
It had almost disappeared, but out front there was still this old hitching post. And I walked over to the hitching post, and I just couldn't figure out what was going on. And I looked on the hitching post, and it had Wells, which was the name of my great-great-grandfather. That was his last name.
Right.
Inscribed on the post. And so I don't wonder if maybe my great-grandfather came back to give me some mining tips.
My God, the power, though. That's really a cool story. Really a cool story. Thank you.
Thank you, Art.
Right, take care. That's really a cool story. What if the entity on the other side, the relative, has enough power to not just manifest himself, but manifest an entire setting?